Our gospel lesson today is the gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 13, verses 10 to 17. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called over and he said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him, and he said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he was doing. And this is the gospel of our risen Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
Have you ever seen those before and after pictures? Sometimes we see it in, there's somebody trying to sell the latest new diet drug, and there's a picture of somebody before, and then there's a picture of them after. They're Facebook. How many here does Facebook? Every now and again, Facebook will come up with this picture of you from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 16 years ago. That, and then you're to put on, you're to upload a picture of you now. So there's the before and the after. A couple of days ago, there was a picture of me. I had just finished Kim's son Aaron's wedding, and I have to run off to St. Matthew's was still open at the time, and I had a wedding I had to do before I got down to the reception of Aaron's wedding, and I'm sitting on my scooter. I had an older scooter at the time. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now, and I had one of those Van Dykes that were popular. I know they're still popular around here with the the camouflage crowd. Somewhat, they call them goatees, but they're not. They're Van Dykes because this is, the hair that goes around here and connects to the little beard here. You still see them from time to time. So here I am, 50 pounds heavier, sitting on the scooter. My helmet is like, do you remember Gazoo in the Flintstones, the little spaceman? This helmet looked like Gazoo's helmet, and I'm sitting in my clerical clothes, black suit, black shirt, and a collar on the, quite a picture. So that was 16 years ago, and I haven't yet put on I think maybe when I go home I'll get on my new scooter, put on my helmet, and take an after picture. So there's the before and the after picture. That's what today's gospel reminds me of. It shows us before and after pictures of the woman who appears in the synagogue while Jesus is teaching. The before picture shows her crippled. She's bent over. She's unable to stand up straight. She's in pain. Her face is pinched with pain and lined with years of agony. She's been like that for 18 years. So what do you see? Take that picture in your mind's eye and your mind's Facebook page. I don't know, the picture. Look at the picture in your mind's eye. What do you see when you look at her? What do you imagine she's feeling and thinking? What feelings does she bring up in you? What is she looking for? And do you recognize yourself in her? Where have you seen her in St. George? Where have you seen her when you've been out and about? What does she represent for you? Maybe she represents the way we can be weighed down by circumstances and the heaviness of life. Maybe she represents the ways in which our lives can be crippled and bent out of shape. Maybe she represents how social and political, economic, justice or religious systems can be crooked and bent or crippled and oppress others. Then there's the after picture. It shows her standing up straight, restored, upright, in alignment with life. What do you see now when you look at her? Imagine the possibilities that now lay before her and how her life might be different. Where have you seen this picture in your life and our world? What feelings does she bring up in you? Hope, courage, desire, inspiration, joy, gratitude. Isn't it a picture of what you want for yourself, for others, for our community, for our congregations, for our country? What would it be like for us in St. George, Charlotte County, New Brunswick, Canada, the world? I feel like I'm in elementary school writing that on my scribbler, you know, when you, how many ever did that? You write your address and you go all the way out to the world. What would it be like for us here? And in this time of transition and change within our congregations, as we are preparing to welcome a new leader, a new preacher, a new pastor who will be able to have the time to visit, to walk with you in ways I've not been able to stand up straight, restored, and aligned with the life and the values of God. They are two different pictures to show two realities of our lives and world. We've all known times when we were crippled and bent over. We've all known times when we stood tall and straight. Whenever I see the before and after pictures, I always wonder what happened in between. Even those pictures I mentioned earlier of 16 years ago. If I do get around to putting that new picture up today, wow, what happened in between. Some pretty crippling events happened. But yet there was also many restorative events have happened. The up and the down. Definitely not that same person that was in that picture 16 years ago. Luke tells us what happened to this woman. Do you remember? Two things Jesus saw. Jesus saw her, and he laid his hands on her. It's a pattern we see again and again in the Gospels. Jesus sees and he touches another, and the picture of life changes. It's a beautiful thing. What's going on when Jesus sees and touches? Some might say it's a supernatural intervention that only Jesus can do. Others might say it is fantasy, magical, wishful thinking. Either way, we close ourselves off from the truth and the power of this story. So what if it's neither? What if we set aside both those interpretations? What if we simply opened and exposed ourselves to the truth that seeing and touching have the power to transform lives? You know what power is like, don't you? My guess everyone here has experienced it. Recall a time or a situation in your life when you felt invisible, overlooked, passed by. You were looked at but not seen, and it left you crippled and bent over. Now recall a time when another really saw you and valued you and acknowledged your life as important. I'll bet you stood up just a bit straighter. That's the power of seeing. Haven't there been times when you said to someone, do you remember when you said or did such a thing? It really touched me. It made a difference. Thank you. And he or she had no idea of what you were talking about. And I bet there have been times when someone thanked you for touching their life by what you said or did, and you didn't recall doing or saying anything. I remember a story years ago. I had this kid in my youth group way back when I was working as a youth minister in St. John, and I had this wonderful group of ragtag teens. And there was this one girl, quite opinionated. She at times could be a real pain in the lower back, if you know what I mean. And this particular night, she was sitting up in a tree. Almost like a Zacchaeus moment, I don't know. She's sitting up in this tree, and I call her down, and I said, look, Kendra, I said, you have real leadership capability. I said, there's something in you that can really make a difference in people's lives. I see it in you. And years later, you left it at that. Years later, I'm at Sobeys. Her mother calls me over. She says, I want to thank you. She says, remember that night that Kendra was up in the tree and you talked to her? Yeah, well, she's graduating with her social work degree this week. Oh. Totally forgot about that. There's times when you have said things that has changed a person's life. And when we do hear about it, what does that make us do? It makes us stand up a little straighter. Absolutely. Who has seen and touched your life in a way that let you stand a bit taller, to be more yourself, or be more fully engaged in life? When have you done that for another? And what would it be like if we lived together like that today? Maybe Jesus is showing us how to change the picture of life and asking, even insisting, that we also see and touch others like he does. Imagine how the picture of life for our community and one another would change if we saw with the eyes of Jesus and touched with his hands. Isn't that what we are seeking every time we pray? Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That the seeing and the touching life of Christ would be in this world embodied by you and me. That we would be seeing and touching Christ for one another. I think we would be a community in which offense is met with forgiveness, hatred with love, fear with courage, exclusion with welcome, suffering with compassion. We would be a very different picture than the one we often see. So why don't we do that? Why don't we see and touch others in that way? I wonder if it's because we put our rules, our law, our opinion, our agendas, and attitudes over people. We stand stiff and rigid and indignant like the religious leader in today's gospel. There are 6 days on which work ought to be done, he says. Come on those days and be cured. It's not on the Sabbath day. It's not in the liturgy. Things are to be done in decency and in order. I knew you'd get that one. Every time we make rules or policies more important than people, our lives are out of shape. What if the leader would have seen and touched the woman? I wonder in what ways she and he would have been untied and freed. I don't think the woman is the only crippled and bent over person in today's gospel. The leader is just as crippled and bent over. The difference is the woman knows she is, but the leader doesn't know he is. He has chosen the law, the rules, and the way we've always done it over another human being, and it has distorted and crippled his life. I wonder if that sometimes happens to us. In what ways might this picture of the leader describe our lives today? How would that describe the life of our congregation today? Jesus never did that. He always put people first, even when it meant upsetting the authorities, breaking the rules, and changing the way we've always done it. He saw them and laid hands on them regardless of who they were and what had happened to them or what they had done, because people came first. That's how I want to live, don't you? That's what I want for these congregations, for our towns, for our region, for our county. That's what I want. That's what I want for you. That's what I want for myself. What would that look like in your life today? Who are the crippled and bent over people needing to be seen and touched by you? Where do you see crooked, bent, and oppressive systems? What would it take to see and lay hands on another in a way that allows her or him to stand up taller and straighter? What if we were to see and touch them in a way that makes a difference to touch with love, forgiveness, compassion, and hope, and courage and encouragement. When I imagine what life and our world would look like, I see a picture I want to be in, don't you? We have the power to change the picture of life, to see and to touch. I wonder how we will be a part of creating a new after picture. Amen.